up, guys? What up, Amada Brothers? I'm Daydreamer. This is Satirius.
How goes it? Whatever.
So what if I told you, if I came to you and I was like, hey, what's the difference between someone being dependent on a drug versus someone being addicted to a drug?
Okay, you're asking me.
Yeah,
what's the difference?
if I came to you and I was like, hey, I'm not addicted to this drug, but I am highly dependent on it.
You're in denial. Wouldn't that just be one and the same?
That's what I thought too.
Is that not true?
Mikhaila Peterson thinks differently.
Oh, interesting.
And it's not just her. Apparently, this is an actual debate within the medical community. I am on the same boat as you, though. I just think they're trying to rebrand.
I think so too. There would be no reason to be dependent on any drug, in my opinion. There'd be instances of you using it when you absolutely need it most, but at that point you should know, like, I don't need to continue to use this thing. You should be working to fix it instead, right? So I just feel like to say I'm dependent on a drug is more or less a lie. Now, I've never been dependent on a drug, but
right.
I just, why? Shouldn't you be working to fix it, right? Whether it be a health thing or exercise, diet, whatever it is, like there should be those more so than you saying, oh yeah, I need this drug in order for me to live my day to day.
Right.
I think that could be a lie.
It strikes me the same way as like when the left says, oh, they're not homeless, they're unhoused. I'm just like, hold up, like it's the same thing. Like
that's one.
You're trying to use this. You're playing this semantic game where you're trying to use these nice words. I don't think it's necessary. I like Jordan Peterson.
Same.
Saying he has an addiction or he had an addiction is fine.
Agreed.
But they're saying it was a dependence. Anyways, okay. So I had never heard the argument of dependence versus addiction. This is the first time I've ever heard it when Candance was debating Mikhaila. So this is the exchange between Candance and Mikhaila.
You know that 1/5 of Americans are on psych meds, right? Are you aware of the statistics?
Yes.
Are those all people with
Correct.
addictions? Like, is that your view of people on psych meds just in general?
No, your father spoke out about his benzo addiction, so I don't understand why you're asking.
Yeah, no, benzo dependence. Maybe you don't know anything about this. If you're on a psych med long term, you form a dependence on it, and it's very difficult to get off of. They're starting to teach this in medical school. It's a disaster because so many Americans are on psych meds. So yeah, he suffered from psych med withdrawal because they make you form a dependence on it, especially long term. Now, calling it an addiction as if he was on heroin or something is manipulative. You know, so when we talked about it and we were very honest about what was going on, part of it was to spread awareness that 1/5 of Americans are on medications that cause dependence and don't know it. It's horrible. People die because of it. So I think laughing about it is like, it's not cool.
No.
I certainly don't think I laughed at it. I think benzo dependence is pretty much a euphemism for an addiction. And if you know anything about my work,
that's
and
the
me being
problem,
super crunchy and speaking about why I think medicines are bad because they do create dependencies, which then yield people going onto the streets for something stronger. I mean, the benzo addiction becomes a heroin addiction because the doctor won't write you the prescription anymore. So you turn to the streets for something stronger because your body is dependent on it. I'm sorry that, again, you are offended by this conversation simply because it is your father. I don't think I've been offensive in my language. And if you find it to be manipulative, that I think that it impacted the way that men saw him when they publicly were saying that on Twitter. We covered the tweets that people were writing on that day about how, you know, they used to idolize him. They're so grateful for his book, but this is not the person that they knew. Again, I'm sorry you're offended by that, but it's just the reality of what happened. And I can tell this is a sensitive topic for you, but it is what it is, Mikhaila. I don't know what to say. I don't think anybody's laughed at it. I think it's a good conversation to be had, and no one is more anti-big pharma than me. I mean, I haven't.
Okay, so that's pretty much the whole clip. I do think it's admirable how she defends her father.
Yeah, agreed. But that's entirely all that it is. The sense that I get from Mikhaila is that she's just like, you can't say these mean things about my dad. Like, and it's sweet. I understand it. But dependence and addiction, the way that I see it, are one and the same. And actually, they use the word dependent to define addicted.
Do
right?
they actually?
They do, yeah. So the actual definition is physically and mentally dependent on a particular substance and unable to stop taking it without incurring adverse effect. And so what Mikhaila was trying to do was essentially differentiate dependent and addiction when in reality it's one and the same. It's just addiction has a negative connotation to it.
Yes.
Dependence makes it seem like it's not of your fault, which probably is true, right? Like when a doctor prescribes you something, sometimes it's kind of hard to get off of something that gives you quite an enjoyable
provides
effect,
relief in some way.
Provides relief in some way, right? And I wouldn't blame the patient as much as I'd blame the doctor for knowing very well like this is strong and this is the side effect. Did you warn them of this or kind of deal?
I wish she would have differentiated it in a way that made a little bit more sense. Because if you say dependence means that you did get addicted, but it wasn't your fault because the doctors prescribed them and you trusted it. That's what dependence means. Versus addiction is just like the standard definition. I would give her more leeway. I still don't like it because again, you're just doing some wordplay.
Sure.
But it'd make more sense. But to say that they're completely different.
Well, I think what Mikhaila is thinking is that Jordan Peterson, when you hear the word addiction, it's that Jordan Peterson sought out this drug so that he can mask some sort of emotion or
right.
He purely could not leave it alone. And despite not needing it anymore, he still went looking for this drug, right? And that's when we hear addiction, that's what we think.
Yeah.
We just keep searching for something when we don't need it. But she did make a good point where it's like sometimes you don't realize that you've now grown addicted to this thing. And I would say that's true of a drug prescribed to you by a doctor that's stronger than your standard drug, right? At some point you don't realize like I keep searching for this thing, but the doctor keeps telling me, oh, you need to continue to take this thing because it's helping your condition. I'm like, well, no, I at some point you got to fix it. You can't keep masking it with the same drug over and over again. Like I just don't think it's effective.
Yeah, I agree, but we're not doctors, so don't follow our advice.
Sure. But also I wouldn't like make going on a drug your first choice, but certainly consider it if it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
I think that's some sort of advice I'd be willing to put out there, though I'm not a doctor. But I get where Mikhaila's coming from. I think she just feels offended for her dad, and I think that it's cute, and I think it's fair.
It is cute. I think it's fine as well.
I don't know if they ever really intended for that to be a debate between the two, and she clearly did not do a good job in a debate against Candance on that. But I even think Candance was being very sympathetic towards her too.
I think so too. Candance was being so nice and like, hey. But she was still firm and like, no, this is still my belief though. Like, hey.
Right. And I think she was fair to say all of that.
I think Candance did great, but I think it stems from the fact that Mikhaila she's defending this kind of not indefensible, but really, really hard to defend position.
Right.
And there's no way around it if she wants to just defend her dad.
I'm glad he overcame it though. Like I'm personally not going to think any less of Jordan Peterson because he was stuck on a drug for a bit. I could really see that, and I think once it's consumed you, getting off of that takes a different level of mental fortitude and discipline to get off of that.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Like we're all trained to listen to our doctor. I just if the doctor did you wrong, then go get a different doctor and hope that doctor doesn't do you wrong.
And sue that first doctor into the ground.
I would. I don't know. Any doctor that makes their immediate fix, like take this drug and that's all that you need, I think that's BS. And I think that's a bad doctor, in my opinion.
I agree. No, I agree.
In my personal opinion.
Dependence, addiction, however you want to say it. When it's your dad, I get it.
Yeah. No, we get it, Mikhaila. We're not going against you in any manner here, but I think it's an addiction. I think Jordan would agree with that too.
Well, who knows?
Well, I won't speak on his behalf, but I just think it's sensible. He's a logical man. I mean no disrespect, but I completely understand.
If you want to clean it up, here's my advice. I would say if you're going to define dependence versus addiction, dependence is when a doctor prescribes you a drug that you then become addicted to. And then addiction is when you go out and seek the drug yourself to mask some sort of thing, some sort of feeling. That's how I would like clean it if I were to try to play this weird word game where you want to use dependence instead of addiction so that your father isn't associated with this negative connotation of addiction.
Right.
That's how I would try to play it. I don't think it'd be accepted. I think it's still, hey, you know what? It was an addiction. Like, just call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you could try. So I went to medicalnewstoday.com. I don't know if that's a good source or not, but that's the first one that came up on the Googles. The terms addiction and dependence can seem similar, but they are different. Dependence occurs when the body physically relies on a drug. Addiction involves changes in behavior. A person with an addiction has difficulty not using substances or doing rewarding activities, even if it is harming them. A person can have an addiction without necessarily having a physical dependence. Similarly, a person can have a physical dependence on a drug without feeling compelled to use it. However, they may still experience withdrawal symptoms if they stop taking it.
Okay, the only thing I can think of, I know it's not a drug, is coffee, right? I've experienced withdrawals because I drink an excess amount of coffee.
Right.
The withdrawal is major headaches.
But you yourself would call yourself a coffee addict.
Absolutely.
Not a coffee
I'm
dependent.
Shoot, I think I've used them interchangeably, honestly. Like there have been days where I'll say
Sure,
I'm
yeah,
dependent
that's
on
the
coffee
fix.
because I'm really tired, right? But in reality, I do have a coffee addiction, and equally in the same, a dependence on coffee for my energy levels to remain higher, right? If I had just gotten good sleep, right? Number one, anytime I get really good sleep, I am fine. And then occasionally I'll get withdrawals, like a headache. But I have received the withdrawals. Like the way past that is you push past the withdrawals, right?
Right.
You recondition yourself by either slowly reducing the caffeine content or get rid of it cold turkey. Either way, like it's doable. Now, obviously that's coffee, not a drug, and they're completely different levels. But I do think like at the end of the day, whether I call it dependence or an addiction, it's still the same thing. It's me seeking this thing out because I have something that's deficient, and that in this case would be energy or sleep. And again, I just don't see a difference. Like you're going to the doctor because you're seeking something, they're giving you that drug. Therefore, it's what difference is that than someone going to the streets and seeking out heroin because they need to get their fix? Like, is that fair to say is the same thing?
Okay.
Just one sounds worse than the other.
This one makes a little more sense. It says addiction is a chronic health condition. It occurs when a person has difficulty stopping substance use or engaging in behavior that provides some type of benefit, causes cravings, compulsive behavior, and changes in the brain.
Okay.
Physical dependence is when the body adapts to a substance presence. It leads to withdrawal symptoms if usage abruptly ends or is reduced.
No more coffee.
Unlike addiction, dependence does not necessarily involve difficulty controlling behavior. A person may feel indifferent toward the drug they are taking, but because the body has adapted to its presence, a person may experience negative effects if they lower the dosage or stop taking it altogether. I get what they're doing here. I still think it's a weird wordplay thing.
Here's my thought. I think Jordan Peterson was addictively dependent.
End of thought. We refuse to elaborate. We don't need to explain ourselves. What do you guys think? Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.